we're gonna open the floor to public comment, and then we'll also introduce Kat. So Kat's our newest board member. What would you like to share?
Glad to be here. Doing this kind of as part of my county board duties, but I only realized recently that that actually wasn't necessarily a direct connection. Interested in seeing things moving forward with the fundraising campaign and with the eventual outdoor stuff, so I'm hopeful about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So Gary stepped away, so Kat's kind of here to represent the county in place of Gary doing that. Okay.
Kat, do you know everybody, or do you want us to go around?
I do not, so
Okay.
let's, yes, hi.
I'm Travis Liptow, Director of IT at Ripon Area School District.
So he's the school district representative on the board.
I'm Mary Madram. I'm at large from the community.
Okay.
Hey, Kat.
Hi.
You probably.
I think I know you.
Hi, Janet. Lauren McConnell, acting president, or whatever, I don't know what the word is, but anyway, president.
Breck, board member.
Who's that?
Former Whitman High
For
School
you.
tennis coach.
Go ahead,
No, go ahead, Jan.
What am I doing? Introducing yourself
To Kat.
Oh, Kat knows me.
And of course, I'm Doug Iverson, I'm the council representative on the board.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, welcome.
Yes.
Welcome, Kat.
Excited
Thank
to
you
have
very
you.
much.
Okay, we're gonna move to the next item, approve the minutes of the April 30th, 2024 meeting. Any questions, comments, concerns, or can I get a motion?
And I need to change to meeting, from meeting notice to minutes at the top, so I will make that correction. So.
Move to approve minutes.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move to the next item, staff reports, and we'll first hear from our staff guest.
Hello, my name is Pamela Nelson-Eisnagel. I am a circulation assistant. I've been with this library for, I guess it'll be 12 years in July. And let's see, I have a bachelor's in English. I started in Madison, broke away to have a family, and finished in Oshkosh. And both schools were fantastic. I was impressed with what Oshkosh offered. And in Madison, my emphasis had been in creative writing. But just to get it in and done, I majored in English Lit. So. And I tend to work with the pages more than anyone else on staff because the way my schedule is, pages usually work in the evenings and my shift is usually in the evenings. So.
Pam works 3 shifts a week,
Yeah.
and so has taken on the display case right now, and some of the children's display areas too. That's what she's been working on. So if you have any ideas for the display case upstairs, you can contact Pam.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a pages meeting tonight
After this.
Yes.
Yep.
What's your title?
Circulation assistant.
Okay, so that's that new job thing we're looking
The
at.
existing,
Yeah,
we're just
same.
reviewing it.
Okay.
Yep, they all fall under that.
All right, and we're gonna move on to hearing the library director's report.
Okay, so one update on the fire alarm and signaling inspection. A representative from Cintas just stopped in today. So he said that the reason they mentioned them this year, the vents and the smoke detectors, is that some places are being more strict about it. And so they've been told to mention things. He said it's up to the fire department if they're grandfathered in or not, so we have a city department head meeting, so hopefully I'll see the fire chief tomorrow and we'll ask him about it. So he said if the fire department says it's fine and they're grandfathered in, to let them know, and they'll note that on the report, so.
What does it mean to be grandfathered in this case? Grandfathered into what?
That the code didn't exist when it was installed, and then the code changed after it was installed,
I see.
so.
Okay.
Would there be a reason why we wouldn't want to be current to the code?
No, it wasn't too expensive. I asked Alan at DPW about it, and this is what he recommended that I follow up on and ask if it really needed to be done or what the
Okay.
rationale was.
Is the issue that if you have a vent there, it would blow smoke away and the smoke alarm might not actually
Exactly.
really function?
Mhm.
That seems like it matters.
Although he said, well, the building is full of books and it's probably really gonna burn, so we wouldn't have to worry about it, is what he
Oh.
told me today.
Oh,
So,
how reassuring.
Yes.
Maybe it's something we look at adding into the
During the
facilities master
renovation.
plan renovation, yeah, if it's not.
Did you
something
have a
we would-
quote from them?
yes, they didn't itemize it though, so we also need to replace a pull station down here, which does need to be replaced because it's broken. So the total quote was 643. But they said that's what they think without looking at it, if additional wiring needs to be moved, it could be more, so. But I did try to ask them already once for an itemized quote for just the pull station, and I need to ask again because they didn't answer my question, so. And then I just wanted to mention, I found out today that Hachette Books, which had said it was discontinuing physical books on CD, has changed its mind and is going to put some titles out. They do David Baldacci, James Patterson, Sandra Brown. So I don't know if they're working exclusively with Blackstone Publishing or if it will be available through all of our jobbers, but we'll be getting those later this year as soon as they can get them into production, so.
Do books on CD still go out?
Enough, and especially the popular authors,
Yeah.
which is mainly what they had,
Right,
so,
right, okay.
yes. I wanted to mention, so we're having in partnership with the UW extension of Green Lake, because Fond du Lac was vacant for a little bit, a Planning Ahead series, and that does kick off next week, about estate planning and other topics, and that we have 12 people signed up already, so I was really happy about that. And the presenter was here today testing out all of her computer equipment and everything to make sure that she's got sound and video, knows how to play, so very excited that we had such a good response, so. And then just under the donations, the Ripon New Kiwanis, they're designated for the toy library, and so Linda will be buying a new rug, along with 3 back jack chairs. There are a couple of examples of ones of those in the toy library, and those are not in very good shape, so she'll be replacing the chairs that are up there. And that's what that money is going towards, so.
I'm curious, how do you do the funds? Like, do you have a whole bunch of different little NITSE designated funds for these sorts of things?
No, so that we have a renovation fund, and so the amounts that are designated for the renovation, these two wrote this check out to the Ripon Public Library, so those get deposited with the city, and then we invoice it out to have them write the check out to the community foundation. And then the other ones just get deposited into whatever our city fund is, so the $500 would go into the operating supplies, and then when we get the invoice for the rug and the chairs, we pay it out of that fund, so those all go through the city
Okay.
that are being spent right away.
Yeah, the ones that are being spent kind of right away within like a 3 to 4 month timeline maybe? Anything that maybe doesn't have an idea of how it's gonna be spent will go into our OACF separate pots, which we do have.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I think that's all unless there are
Is this the
questions.
place to ask some questions about the financials for the month?
Sure.
Okay. It looks like, which is a positive, I just wondered why the library grant from Fond du Lac County is actually $7,600 more than what we budgeted.
Because that was the second year of the county executive, and they are currently reimbursing us at more than 100%. And when Winnebago County got a new county executive, first year he just rubber stamped the request, and the second year he almost was going to cut them back to 100% instead. So statute says they need to reimburse at 70%, and all 5 of the Winnefox counties are getting reimbursed at 100%. The fact that Fond du Lac County is reimbursing at like 106% is unusual. The previous county exec in Fond du Lac County was a very ardent supporter of libraries and never wanted to see them have to take a cut at all. So, but this being his second year, I was just a little more unsure, and I didn't want to put it in and then have him say we're only reimbursing at 100%.
So when you budgeted, you budgeted at 100%, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. Then my next question gets into the expense side. Overtime, we've got a budget of 6,000 for the year, and our year-to-date actual's already at 50% of budget, and we're only a third of the way through the year. So I'm wondering if that was just an anomaly.
No, those are Sunday hours, and so we're closed Sundays in the summer,
Okay,
so we'll have 3 months where we don't have any overtime. And then it'll be the September, October, November, December.
so you feel comfortable with the actual?
Yes, because
Versus
we're already
budget.
more than, because we've already had 5 months and 4 months in, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my last one is, under training services,
Mhm.
we budgeted 1,700, we've spent 2,900.
That's one of those, we just got reimbursed from Winnifox for grants that we had. So we reimbursed Susie, and now Winnifox, you'll see it, and the next month we'll have revenue coming into that line item.
So, well, where would the revenue show up? Up top, because this is the expenses. How do we
So-
report revenue coming in from?
So it's like this
Winnifox.
negative, so the line down, office supplies, there's a parentheses there of the 138, so that's because we got a grant for the office supplies line.
Okay, but in terms of the reporting, so we don't have a mechanism to report the revenue. You're saying that it goes directly against the expense account, which?
That's how the city has been doing
Okay,
it.
I'll have to ask Amanda about that, okay.
I mean, I bring the check over to the city and I get a receipt when the check is deposited, so I have a receipt for every individual deposit, but yes,
And then you see that account go back up.
right.
Well, but that's on the expense side, that's really not reflecting these inflows of money that are coming in.
Mhm.
You're
Which
saying
are
maybe there
additional-
should be a revenue account versus an expense account, is that?
Well, you would have
In addition
both.
to-
Yeah,
You
right,
would have, if this how did we get the money from,
Right.
how did we get the money from Winnifox?
They sent a check made out to.
No, I mean, what was the source of that funding? You applied for a grant or you applied, okay, so that's what I'm saying, because our sources of revenue here are property taxes,
Right.
the grant from the county, and revenue coming in from fines. We're not showing grant money or any of that reflected here. It reflects as an offset against expenses, which is, okay, I'll talk to her and find out if that is really how it should be.
maybe we're misunderstanding the process, but as far as I understand it, that's how it's been done.
Okay,
Okay, we're gonna move on to the
Just
May.
one thing,
Go ahead.
under meetings, May 22, it says, Desiree, you went to the Ripon Chamber Annual Celebration,
Yes. Mhm.
and you paid out of pocket?
Yep.
Was that over $10, and should you be reimbursed?
It was 50,
It was 50.
because I was there as well.
Should you be reimbursed?
I don't know, I felt like that was kind of a borderline thing. Linda also went and paid out of pocket, Susie went and volunteered, but I think she paid out of pocket. Volunteers had to
50
pay
each,
less.
yep.
what did you have to pay for?
So
It was a dinner.
their annual dinner.
Oh, it was a dinner,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
I would
And
think
a
you'd be
fundraiser. So,
Yeah, it was a fundraiser.
Yeah, so it's not,
Oh,
you
Yeah.
can't really make the library pay for the chamber.
right.
Right,
Gotcha.
yeah, so.
All
And I
right.
didn't count it as work time either, but I was there because I'm.
Well, thanks for going.
So, yeah.
That was a nice, nice thing.
And you went to,
Okay, we are gonna move on to the May 2024 invoices. Any questions or comments on those?
Quick question, so you have multiple magazines, periodicals,
Mhm.
is there like a conglomerate you could use to save yourself some time, like EBSCO does,
Yeah.
does that for academic
Let's
goals?
go.
They did, I think they discontinued. Everybody, so Demco had done it, and then they discontinued several years ago. Amazon had magazine subscription service, and they discontinued. So the problem, I know there's one, Cox still does it, I think. I think EBSCO discontinued, but I'm not
There's
sure.
EBSCO and Net, they don't have
Okay.
every periodical, right, so
Okay.
there may be others you have to do individually, but
It's just, they were so much more expensive, so Demco always offered us an across-the-board 11% discount. Like Cox didn't offer, I don't think, any discount at all. You know, and then when you get the renewals and you see, well, I can get 3 years for $30 and they're charging us $30 a year, you know, it just didn't financially make sense. And it is a source of frustration, because magazines are like whack-a-mole, they cease, they dump it into another magazine. I mean, we've got one subscription that we've got out through 2028 now, so, it's just, yeah. But I think it's cheaper this way, and so.
It's cheaper, like on a dollar
Yeah,
basis,
right.
for like your time.
Right.
resources, yeah.
You're always short of, so
Mhm.
I'm just curious if there's a way you could save yourself some time.
No.
Do magazines still go out pretty regularly?
I think they do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hey, stop
It did help that we,
I'm just asking, old people like them.
yes,
I like
and-
magazines.
Yeah.
and we now let the current issues circulate, and we just have a notice behind it that this one is checked out, so I think that really helped
Yeah.
increase
Yep.
the circulation too, so.
Yeah, that's how Berlin does it too.
I have one more thing on the director's report before we close that. When you spoke about the Winnifox updates, you made a specific note about Oshkosh changing their hours
Yes.
and opening at 9. Was this due to their census, or what was their thinking?
The director's rationale is that he wants the team to still get there at 8 so that they can have meetings with staff before they open at 9, so.
New director too.
Yeah, it's a new director.
From Hennessy.
They had previously been, so they had been 9 to 9, and then the downtown Y got renovated. It was like big new traction, and that opened early. And so they decided to move to 8 to 8, so they maintain their hours but open an hour early so that they could capture those people who might be exercising and then coming on the books. So I find it interesting that they're losing hours. They're not changing back to 9 PM, they're still closing at 8, so.
Okay.
Do we know what the public feeling was on that?
It just started today. Today was their first day
All right.
of it.
All right.
And the behavior policy goes into effect today,
Got it.
so.
Got it.
So I will also, before I forget, so Winnifox, this is the first year they're doing it, other library systems have done it. So this is a Library Explorer program. It's encouraging you to visit all of the libraries in the system, although Menashie, you get a free space because they are closed right now until July 1st as they're renovating and moving into a temporary location. So they do have a prize drawing for different levels. If you go to 4 of the libraries in a county, then you get a prize entry. If you go to all of the libraries in the county, you get another prize entry. And so then they'll have some prize drawings. So this is for the public. And then they also have a version for all of the staff in Winnifox, and we have an extra month to do it. And they'll have a prize drawing for gift cards for staff. And in-house, we're gonna run our own competition among staff and offer prizes. So we have a few people that'll donate things for a little prize basket for staff. So just something fun for people to do and get them out and about this summer, so.
What's the overall goal? Just to know all the libraries in our area?
Probably.
And I think to get people to visit, you know, to maybe realize, you know, so like our game collection here, we have a really nice game collection. We don't send that out, so you have to come here in order to check it out. And people might not know that. And, you know, Green Lake and Princeton aren't too far, so maybe it's worth a drive to come over to look at that. So, you know, and other libraries have unique collection of things also that don't travel on the bands for whatever reason. They're too big or they're too expensive or cumbersome, so. Just get people
Also,
out and exploring.
realizing that we have 38 libraries in 5 counties is pretty huge, and almost always it's free programming. So for people who've got tight purse strings or lots of kids or both, I think that's pretty cool too.
Is this piece on our summer schedule, is this the one that the school is not willing to
Right.
hand out?
Right.
Because it's competing with their programs?
Because on Thursday
Summer
we have
library.
the,
For summer school, right, you said?
right,
Yeah.
because on Thursday we have a program on Thursday mornings. We have our story time on Thursday
Yeah,
mornings
summer.
Okay. And,
during summer school.
oh, okay. Okay.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next item, old business. So the first thing we can talk about is the phone system replacement.
Okay, so the cutover is actually gonna happen tomorrow. It was today, but decided to wait another day because Ben ended up being on desk today. But everything is set up. We have the new phones, they're all programmed and ready to go. So we've been able to call out on them, we just aren't receiving calls in, so that'll change tomorrow. We've had a little bit of a blip with the fax machine service. So we were gonna go with Verizon and bought this little adapter that changes the cell signal into analog, and it's just not working very reliably. Verizon does have its own eFax service where you scan the document and then it converts it, and it's actually cheaper, so that's what we're going to try next. We also still are waiting to hear about the elevator, so that will remain on with Brightspeed until we get that fixed. We checked with the elevator company, who had a very low monthly cost for the phone line, but it was going to be over $3,000 to install it, which was more than if we had to hardwire the building for another internet line. So Verizon also offers an elevator service line where you can convert it, but it needs to be wired, and so we're reaching out to one of the local companies to come do the wiring. So like I said, it'll be on Brightspeed for a little bit longer.
The e-fax, does that print out of a fax machine on the other end?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the update on that.
Questions on that? Okay, we're gonna move on to the next item, the RFP
yeah.
for facilities master plan.
RFP stands for?
Request for proposals.
So I just wanted to let you know that it has been sent out. I know that MSA has received it because I had a meeting with Ben about our grant writing, and he knew that they had gotten it. I haven't heard for sure if they're submitting, but Engberg Anderson, it definitely will be submitting a proposal, so.
And the due date on that again, remind me?
June 6th.
And which one was that, MSA?
Engberg Anderson will be submitting a proposal.
Okay.
MSA has definitely received the,
Okay.
yeah.
Could I just get a little bit of clarification on that? I didn't read that whole agreement, that was
Oh,
tough sledding.
oh, that's a different thing. The agreement is a different thing.
I guess I was just a little uncertain about what that was for. Is that
The
like a
facilities
master
master
plan? Okay,
What, sorry, you're talking about the agreement that was part of the attachment?
yeah,
That's
Oh,
separate.
That's
that's a
separate.
separate thing,
Yes.
okay.
I couldn't
Okay,
figure
so-
out what-
So the RFP is to do a master plan?
Correct, to hire a firm
Hire a
to
firm
help
to do
us
a master
basically prioritize
Got it,
some of the maintenance items that we learned about based off of a
Right.
walkthrough from the city.
right.
And then ideally marry that maintenance prioritization plan with the renovation plan, with capital improvement plan, with strategic planning plan. So just create one unified vision with all of that kind of in there is like the ideal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Can you tell us about the meeting you had with the city regarding that?
That was a while ago.
It says
Sorry,
on
what do
May
you mean?
20, that you had a online meeting with
Oh,
the
that was
city.
about the grant writing. That was the grant writing.
It wasn't about
That
this.
wasn't the RFP, no.
Okay, so what's the grant writing?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Next item,
Yeah.
or next section. Okay. Any other questions on the RFP? All right. Now we're gonna move on to action items and talk first about the Ripon Public Library bylaws.
And that was in the director's report, and we had discussed this at the last meeting, so I just put this adjusted language in there.
So that's near the end.
Right at the bottom.
Yep. We talked about consecutive terms being changed from 2 to 4. Any thoughts on that?
How long is it term?
A single, single year.
It's a
Single
one-year
Yep.
term
1 year.
as an officer, yeah.
So it was max 2 years, now it'll be max 4 years.
But elections happen every year, right?
Right.
So like if the board decides we don't really like this person as president, that can change.
Still annual then.
Any thoughts, questions, concerns, feelings? Otherwise, can I get a motion to approve?
I will move that we approve that bylaw change as printed.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Great. Okay, next item, MSA Professional Services Agreement, which is the grant.
Right,
Which
so
is
this
what was
is,
attached.
so this is the grant writing proposal, so the board,
Where is it I'm sorry, where is it attached?
On the board packet email,
Yeah.
Desiree sent out,
What's it called?
MSA Professional Services Agreement, May 2024.
Thank you.
Oh.
There it is.
Okay, yeah,
oh, there are a lot of attachments.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
okay.
So the board previously hired MSA to write the grant that we applied for earlier this year. They charged $2,500. It wasn't just us, they had other entities, they also charged $2,500. They realized that they undercharged entities at that time. Like I said, not just us, but there were other grants that they were writing also. So when it came time for this one, they have decided that moving forward, they are now charging their customers the actual time that it takes to write a grant. So the estimation is $8,000 that it will take to write this grant for the Flexible Facilities Program. The board previously authorized $5,000 at the end of last year, knowing that this grant opportunity was going to be coming up and not knowing what the timeline was. But this is a little bit more than that. This is $8,000.
Can you review again what the project, the Flexible Facilities Program, what is that we're applying for?
So there is a pot of $107 million, 20 million of which is guaranteed for libraries in the state. So it's federal funding that's been given to the state to, the Department of Administration is the one administering the grant proposal. Information came out about a month ago. So it has to satisfy 3 criteria: work, education, and healthcare monitoring. So in your grant application, you have to address those 3 things, and you can request up to $4.25 million for your project. The more that you can justify that fits towards those 3 things, the higher you'll be scored. Unlike the grant that we applied for last year, this one has a scoring rubric. It has a definitive timeline, so the deadline is July 11th. Entities will be notified by October 1st. 20 million is guaranteed for libraries.
Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin, 20 million is guaranteed for libraries, and then whichever other projects or the highest could include libraries. It's for community centers, senior centers, youth activity centers, has to be tied to municipality. This is not through school district funding. It's government funding. It's not for any nonprofit group. So much narrower view. Yeah.
What is the health aspect?
Healthcare monitoring. So we're interpreting it as like telehealth visits. So one of the components that we would add that's not been already in our renovation project would be like a laptop lab of 6 computers that we could either teach classes on, or somebody could come and check out a lab and go in one of our new meeting rooms on the 1st floor and sit there and have their telehealth visit with their doctor. Education and work, they could sit there and apply for a resume. It's much more convenient to come and ask for help if they need help. The printer would be right there, the copier, so if they need to print, instead of them being in the basement. So that's one of the ways that we can justify the renovation and adding those rooms on,
So it doesn't, monitoring to me means you're gonna feed your device into it. Does it involve anything like that? Like you're wearing a device? Monitoring to me means, healthcare monitoring means you're gonna feed that in somehow, like.
It's been
Doesn't
very
involve
vague.
that.
It's been very vague.
Okay,
So
that sounds like
attended-
it, yeah.
Right, I attended a webinar and they didn't really.
Because monitoring to me is not a visit, but if that's what they're suggesting, are they suggesting that to you somehow?
I think it just falls under the healthcare umbrella, like how are we helping patrons access their healthcare?
Is there any other ideas we could throw out that would help us on that? I'm trying to think.
Right.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for it to be like online mental health stuff? I mean,
That'd be the same thing.
because so much work is being done that
Right.
way now, and there's so
Right.
many people in
Sure.
our county who cannot
Sure.
access it from home.
Online counseling. It'd be like a doctor visit.
If they had, especially if we had a place that, you're not like windows of people looking in at you while you're
Right.
sobbing on on Zoom or
Right.
something.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense to include that as,
Mhm.
our goal would be also to do online counseling via
Right.
telehealth.
Right, but it's very interesting because you can ask for up to $4.25 million, and none of the expenses are gonna be denied, so if you were building or expanding, but like obviously not the whole $4.25 million is not going specifically for those 3. So, yeah, it's very vague and broad.
What about the other categories, the work and the education? I mean, that's, extremely broad.
Right. Mhm.
So how are we addressing those?
Well, the work is that they could be doing their resume here on the laptop that they're checking out and using it in one of the rooms. The children's area will be redone, so the parent could be, in one of the rooms while the child is right there and they can see them and they're playing and they've got nice new activities to use. Education would be, Susie teaches classes, so we have a class in the larger room up there, and that's why we have the six laptops, so that would be about the max that we would have in a class that involved computers, so.
Or applications online, which they do now, but if you could have a private room for it and emphasize that, right?
Right.
Because some people don't have access to apply online and they have to apply online.
Right,
so.
exactly.
Would it make sense to have a certain number of like times per year that a local business person could do something online at the library, as opposed to having a more permanent facility? Like, I know somebody who does web design, right, and occasionally wants to meet with a client. Well, he don't want to do that in his home, but he only meets in person with a client occasionally.
Right.
Can you put in things like that? Saying, I mean, because you don't want somebody who's like just camps out here forever for a free office, but
Right.
at the same time, it could be a real boost to a business that doesn't justify having a whole office.
Yeah, that's a good, like a temporary business.
Temporary,
Yeah,
just, sort of ad hoc.
Shared work, whatever.
Right.
Well, one of the things that I recall from the strategic plan work was that the statistics about the percentage of people that don't have access to the internet.
Right.
It's 12 or 13% in our service area, if you will. And so how do we marry this with that need? And it seems like six computers is like not enough.
Well, indoor training, how to use computers too, if we could, and it's more about facilities though than, you can't like have ongoing staff or anything involved in this grant,
Correct, right, no
So
operating.
it's facilities, so how would you
Right,
enhance?
but computers would that be considered part of that, facilities?
Yeah.
Computer labs or six computers seems like a drop in the bucket to me.
But
You're talking about 12% of the people don't have access to the internet.
But not having access to the internet isn't the same as not having access to a device.
But I think it was very similar statistic for not having devices too. I thought it was both, were in the strategic, I don't have that in front of me, but it was significant.
I mean,
If you don't have Wi-Fi and sure, if you have a mobile device, you could access your mobile network.
Right.
But I think it was a gap.
Do you have data, like, based on the Federal Communications Commission's statistics about access here? I mean, is that something that you would like to include? I think their map is frankly pretty optimistic. Really, if one person in the census tract has access, they count the whole census tract as having access.
Wow.
And you could go in and challenge it. And I actually encouraged a lot of people to do that. I brought flyers to people in my district because right south of Ripon, there's no good access. But
So that is one of the goals also, so almost all of the Winnipox libraries, except for one, are already at the speed. So it's also providing high-speed internet access, but we're already at the level that's required for the grant. So possibly looking at a couple of additional Wi-Fi routers. I think our coverage is pretty good, but just making sure, checking with Winnipox, like how far does it extend? Because that's another thing is internet access. So
how far does it
we could buy hotspots with it, but they would not pay for the ongoing internet, so then that's a cost.
What is the sort of footprint or perimeter of our Wi-Fi? Do you know like how far outside the building?
I know it goes into the parking lot, but I don't know how far. Like I definitely know like the
Oh,
first
people
lamp post.
sit up
Yeah,
all
you
the
can.
time.
Yeah.
So these people who are helping you write the grant are the ones who should be looking into this stuff,
Right.
right? Okay,
Mhm.
that's what we're paying them for,
Right.
hopefully to find these statistics and see what we might be able to do.
How are you going to tap into all these good ideas for your grant writing? Is it a committee, or is it just working with you and Susie and Linda, or how are they?
Well, Ben and Adam have been sitting in, so, and the state had a webinar and they were updating their FAQs, so the webinar was very informative as
Okay.
to what could be included and what not, and,
But certainly you'll be involved in, as you hear things, you can.
right.
Right.
Mhm.
I just, while we were chatting, Googled healthcare monitoring in libraries in Wisconsin, and in 2023, the American Heart Association debuted the Libraries with Heart in Menominee Falls, which that library provided self-monitored blood pressure kits available for circulation.
That's what I was thinking.
So stuff like that, like a what's it called, Doppler for like hearing a baby's heart, or like stuff that's like probably not really expensive, but that would,
And not really
Impactful.
technical, but things
Yeah.
that people, wearables or.
anyway, so we can, yeah. Okay, any other questions or thoughts on that?
So I will add that since Ben has already worked on a project with us and did this, he thought it would still be around the $5,000, but they needed it in writing that they can go up to 8,000.
Do they have our strategic plan?
I don't know.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to increase that from $5,000 to $8,000.
Second that.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? All right. Next item, discussion items, Finance Committee update. So we met with Carlene and, I forget her name, Kate. Finance Committee met with them, when was that?
May 7th.
May 7th. And they showed us a whole presentation, which is attached as well to our library board packet, and gave us a bunch of data, library fund annual.
You're talking about the Oshkosh Area Foundation, Community Foundation meeting.
Yep.
Thank you.
So what do we have in terms of an update?
Well, I think it's the sheet that they have, the historic analysis, and then just we had the question about how much of the original fund, not the renovation fund, is in investment versus in money market. So it's 195,000 is in the investment pool and 207,000 is in the money market right now.
Okay, wait, slow
So
down.
the money market was available then for us to move over, that's why we moved it there?
Okay,
That's my memory, but
which money are, okay.
Yeah, which report are we on? Because
Let's
there's several
step back
here.
a little bit and, I mean, for the people that weren't involved, I think there needs to be similar to the backstory
Actually, we
to talk about
Start over.
Which one?
Yeah,
what the reason was for
Renovation
the
fund
meeting.
summary?
That one or
If we
that
look
was
at the
one of those
minutes,
two they're
so
talking about
Right,
now.
yeah.
The
I
Finance
just wondered
Committee
which one.
wanted to meet with OACF, Oshkosh Area Community Foundation, to understand where our funds sat, what they looked like, what the growth looked like, and to hopefully connect that data with our investment and expenditures policies to be better stewards of making regular updates to the board and kind of create that full circle there.
Because our investment policy calls for that.
Correct.
That was
Yep.
the genesis of the meeting.
Yes, yep, so we had Kate and Carlene from OACF come and give a presentation and then provide a lot of statistics and data about how our funds have performed, are performing. One of the questions was how it was split, and then another question, if you look at the attachment called Ripon Public Library Fund Analysis, fiscal 2013 through March 2024. That details the specifics about what the expenses were each year, like 2014, you see we spent $8,900, what was that on? 2015, you saw we spent $29,000, what was that on? Because that data wasn't in there when OACF came, so we asked, was that Carlene that provided that? She went through paperwork to see what we made
But I
expenses
think
on.
for people to understand that detail, you need to go to the bottom of that report
Yes.
for the summary. Because the first thing that was presented was the summary of the investment history. So they started handling the money back in 2013. And if you go to that last page, there's a box there that shows beginning value, contributions, distributions, and expenses. We had no detail to tie out what qualified as a distribution and what was an expense. So they went back, the fund, and created
The context,
the other pages with the details so that you can tie out what has money been spent on
Mhm. Yep.
over the course of this 10 years.
well, especially when you see big numbers like 25,000, like what was that for, right? So it's good to have that context.
Mhm. These people are very, extremely competent and it's very inexpensive, it's a very efficient.
Which people?
The
Oshkosh
Oshkosh
Foundation.
Foundation, it's extremely well-structured and, we're paying three-quarters of a percentage point for their
Bill-
management fee.
Bill Wyman still?
Yes.
Yeah, and I was super impressed with the people and their information, and we have tons of information that's available
So you were there?
online that gets sent to Desiree. We need to be reporting that out to the board
Mhm.
in order to fulfill our investment policies requirements.
So I think one thing that came out of this meeting with OACF was maybe having a standing monthly agenda item that just says like OACF update or Finance Committee update. Therefore, we can kind of stick whatever we want within that agenda item, whether it's the fund hasn't grown that much, or we've gained this, or we made a distribution for this, or we approved an expense for this, to just, again, like Mary's saying, hold true to our
Okay.
investment policy.
Could somebody explain the difference between a distribution and an expense?
She did.
So distributions, let's see which one is which. Okay, distributions are ones where it went to the library instead of paying an invoice directly.
Okay, so the library said like, we need $28,000 and it just went to the library and then you spent it on whatever you spent it on.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
And those distributions are only made based off of the approved board minutes that we've voted on. So if we as a board say, okay, we've approved removing $28,000 from the OACF whatever fund to spend on this, then Desiree sends OACF those board minutes and says, per the board minutes, the board has approved removal of $28,000 for X, please cut us a check, or whatever wording you would say. So that's why the minutes are an incredibly integral part of all of this,
Yeah.
because that's how OACF can confirm that it's a legitimate request.
And so what's the process then for expenses? What are we paying for that is not board approved?
Well, it's the same thing. It's just distributions went to the library. So like the first one, which was really big, was $45,000 for carpeting. So the market at that point was very volatile, and the board knew that we were gonna replace the carpeting. The invoice wouldn't be here for like another 6 months. Did we want to pull it out so that we wouldn't take a loss on that? So we pulled out the money early. At that time, we still had a checking account. It sat in the checking account until we paid the invoice to Service and Surroundings for doing the work.
But
So
on the expense side, my understanding of that is that it's an actual invoice.
Right.
That's presented to OACF, and they cut the check to,
Right.
And
So,
like in
so
one
but
case-
but they both have to be approved by the board?
Yes.
Or- okay.
Yep.
So if, I don't know, let's say, well, when we did all the changing of the light bulbs, let's just say that was something that was gonna be paid for through OACF. We would approve that as an expense. Desiree would hire whatever firm to do it, whatever company, get the invoice, and then submit that along with the minutes to OACF and say, please pay this invoice. So
Got it.
similar, adjacent things, but a little different in
Yep,
terms of the
okay.
process.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
I think we should discuss harmonizing those two, distributions and expenses. We should have only exceptions to distributions, and everything else should just be an expense that we invoice to OCAF, just to keep it cleaner. I mean, I understand, I was here when we did the carpet, I know we pulled that out because the market was volatile then. We thought we could preserve that actual cash for the carpet, which we're sitting on right now, ahead of time, but I think that should be an exception and not a general.
and it was. We've only done that 3 times. So
Right.
the carpeting was one. There was one where we had been depositing all of the Giving Tuesday donations into the OACF, and people had designated it for specific things, so then we pulled it back out, and that went to the city, and we expensed it all through the city. And then the only other one is when we transferred out to the renovation fund to create that. So those are the only times that's
But
happened,
it sounds
and that
like
was
in-
necessary.
In practice, we're doing that already.
Right.
so the monies that were spent on the expense side in 22 and 23 that were for campaign planning, was that monies that were approved by the board
Yes.
in advance of, or they were part of a contract
That was,
entered
that
into?
was hiring an external expert.
Right.
So as far as I know, I think that was right around when I joined the board. That was an approved thing.
Was
yes.
there a contract though that was entered into
I
that, because these dollar amounts are campaign planning, I mean, it's not, it's 21,726.74, it's like, you know.
Right, yes, there was a contract, and she had a monthly amount, and then it would be mileage and paper copies extra above that, so.
So you entered into a monthly, it
Yes,
was a
like a
contract for a
stipend.
period of time?
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on finance committee?
One of the other things that came out of that meeting though was our conversation in finance about the allocation of the remaining funds that are sitting in the library fund, the 409,000. As to what is, you guys had a vote last year to designate and how this relates to the need to have a reserve fund
Mhm.
and where that all stands.
I think we need to reevaluate how much we're designating based off of the input feedback from the city that ideally we should be holding 30% of our overall fund back, just as a whatever, just in case, holdover. And I know we had initially talked about designating almost all of it to the renovation fund. And while I love that idea, in practice, I just think that that might be fiscally irresponsible. But I know that's not an action item, so we can just kind of have a discussion.
Well, and then
maybe-
30%, did you have an amount of the annual budget is what they're saying. 30% of our annual budget should be sitting in reserve all the time. That's what they're saying, correct?
Mhm.
How was that number, I bet?
They recommended it.
I think it's standard, the auditor, 25 to 30%. is what
City,
the
or
auditor was
is that
like.
where we
It's-
got the
It's the
number?
auditor,
Audit.
that's what auditors recommend.
And that's what the city, as far as I understand, that's what the city is doing as
And how
well.
much is that, do you remember?
For us?
Yeah.
At the low end, it's 135,000. At the high end, it's
More
about
than- 200-ish. Yeah.
20%'s about 135. 30%'s a little over 200,000. Doug, what's the city's position on their reserve?
I would think we try to keep it around 25-30%.
Okay.
I don't think we're quite meeting that yet, but we're working that way back.
And I think that was what we talked about, could we work toward it? Because the city has never given us ever extra money to do that. The money they give us is money to be spent every year, and so that would mean taking money that we thought was for something else and doing that with it. So, is there some kind of way we could build it up gradually if they intended to give us another, say, 20,000 a year, and then we put it in there? That seems fair to me, but that was just my opinion, so.
What the intention of this donors who've given beyond for the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation, did they intend to have their funds used as a set-aside nest egg? Is that
No?
legal, is that okay?
Yeah.
I mean, she was fine with that. She said that's one of the purposes, was to hold money. And then our other purpose was to give grants, to actually give the money away.
I mean, people like Lois Quinn,
Or
should
you're
give money
talking about
to.
people that
Yeah,
donated,
yeah.
as to
Oh,
what, if
right.
it's,
Right.
if it's undesignated to you,
Right.
then it's
Up to
our
us.
purview as to what you do with it. If
But
someone
if-
designates and says, I specifically want this money to be used for, a certain collection that I want invested in, or I wanna buy, a new children's room, or I want,
Yeah. So with the 400,000, is that all undesignated?
Right.
409.
Well, So the finance
But-
committee voted to put it in those funds, and we passed the finance committee policy, but we didn't take action and have it moved into those places yet, so
You mean
that's
it's
where
in-
we're standing.
It's in the investment policy.
It's in the investment policy, but we never followed through and had to move the money into those separate
But
funds.
you guys voted on doing that,
Right.
correct, last year?
I
Right.
think so.
I guess I'm a little bit confused about it's not clear to me as a donor what sort of earmarking you can do. Like, you know, when we gave money, I understood that it was for the renovation.
That's a separate
and-
fund.
And that is,
And
yeah,
there's
okay.
money in that, there's two funds,
Okay.
Kat. There's a segregated fund that's designated renovation. And
Okay.
all the money that's been raised,
Okay,
including the 90,000 that was transferred by the board out of the general investment fund.
That had
into
already
the-
been designated.
into the
It just
renovation.
wasn't, yeah.
Yeah,
There's two main
Okay.
funds.
Yep, right.
yes,
There's
there's
the
the
general
renovation money,
fund and the
And
renovation.
and
it's
then
roughly
there's
400,000
undesignated
each
money.
one.
okay.
Which is about, right now, this report says there's 452 in the reno and about 409,000 in the library fund, which
Right.
is the general undesignated money.
and I feel that we waited, we got stuck somewhere along here because of the city saying some of these things to us, and that's where we didn't go ahead and move. So we designated 5 funds, and we were going to seed them with something each, into each one out of the 400. And then some other stuff came up, and we weren't sure, we were still supposed to move in that, does that make sense? Move in that direction. So we never asked the foundation to do it.
Okay.
So that's where we
So there's
sit.
something sort of waiting for a decision.
Was it
Or some
February of
kind.
last year when we had the first memo meeting? Okay, so to give you context, Kat, February of last year, we received a memo that we had a subsequent meeting with Adam and Ted. Was Ted there? Was it just Adam? Adam and Amanda. Adam and Amanda, not Ted. The memo was all about how we are sitting on a large pot of money that's undesignated and how it's within the city's right to use that to fill budget gaps.
Just fill budget gaps for the library?
Correct, operating budget gaps for the library.
To consider that those funds are there.
That didn't sit right with, I don't wanna speak for all of us, that didn't sit right with me. I don't think it sat right with most of us considering it was fundraised money, it wasn't levy. So as a reaction to that memo and to the city saying we're going to use that to fill operating budget gaps.
We can't.
We can,
We
yeah.
can't.
We can. And the concern was they were going to, or they were gonna cut us and encourage us to fill that cut with the funds. We created the investment policy and the expenditures policy using existing documents from Oshkosh and doctoring them to what we thought was good and approved them with the intention of designating that general fund into 5 pots and then taking all that was left over and putting it in the renovation fund. So we didn't have any left over for the city to
That wasn't
potentially,
designated.
right, to potentially fill a budget gap with. That was the idea.
And not only did they, to go back to the real beginning, they cut our budget by 5,000, saying that we had undesignated fund. They saw that money sitting there and we lost 5,000 that year, correct? That's what started it.
They didn't, at that time, they didn't know what it was.
Right. So they said, you're gonna not get this 5,000 increase, we're gonna not give it to you, so.
Go ahead.
I'd like to keep this meeting moving on, so what I would suggest to Kat is that she talk to Adam Sontag and get a copy of that letter, because
I'm
really
just gonna continue to
feel it's
provide a
not
little bit of,
quite what,
I'm gonna continue to provide a little bit of context. So
I had
then,
actually talked to Adam.
then we received a memo about some important maintenance items that need to get addressed within the building.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of been in a holding pattern because we created these policies with designating the money into 5 pots, and then the idea was bringing the rest over to the renovation fund. Then we received the maintenance memo, and so now we're wondering if we need to rethink the investment expenditures policy with the idea that we're gonna need some extra operating budget or whatever liquid cash to be able to handle these maintenance pieces, and then out of that came facilities master plan, and can we marry all these plans together for like one common goal with the extra cash, and how do we do it? So we approved the policy, but then now we're like, do we need to go back and reevaluate? So maybe this is a bigger discussion for a different day, but that's the context.
Okay, that's all helpful, thank you.
I mean, my suggestion would be that the finance committee meet again before the next board meeting, that we talk about how much, that we come up with a new recommendation for how much is going to go into each of these funds, how much is gonna stay back in the original fund, and then also look at what we have that's in the investment pool versus in the money market, and look at that split, and does that need to be changed?
What is that split again?
195,000 is in the investment pool, and 207,000 is in the money market.
So liquidity, so you have 207 liquid, 195 invested, okay.
Yep. So that's my suggestion.
So before that meeting, could we explore with the city if they have any, if they expect us to save off 200,000 in reserve, is that what we call it? Is there any help from them to, or do they expect that to come out of that endowment, which people gave to the library as gifts? So what do they think? Before we have that finance meeting, we can go ahead and vote something, but we don't know what they intended.
25 to 30% in reserve.
But I mean,
Janet's
where
saying,
did they think that
is
money
that
would
money
come from?
slowly being built from extra money the city is giving us annually in our budget
Right.
to slowly build it up to 200K?
Right,
Or are we looking to our undesignated funds to
that were
source,
donations.
to fund that
Right.
$200,000 holdover?
Right.
We're keeping back that much and not spending that much.
So the question I have is, would the city help us get to that reserve?
By doing what?
By giving
Giving
us an
us
extra
extra money
5 or
every
10,000
year to put
every
in it.
year in our budget.
I doubt that.
I know
Right,
that's
but I think that's a legitimate question to ask them.
Understand.
How did you think we were going to get to that 200,000?
They would say
By
we
taking
already
your
have it.
409,000 and allocating,
Exactly,
money
but that
to
was
the
money
reserve.
donated by people who thought that would be used for the library, not donated to be sitting in a
Correct.
pot.
But it wasn't designated.
It is ultimately used for the library though.
Right.
That's the point of it, is to say that when you're running an organization of this magnitude, you can't run with no money in your checking account.
I don't disagree with that. I'm asking how we're going to get there, that's all.
We've
I
got
think
the
that-
money in the checking
I
account now.
think the
Right.
city's
No, we
feeling
don't.
is,
Yeah, we do.
I think the city's feeling it, and I'll ask, I'll clarify. I'm gonna open up a draft email so I don't forget right now. Ask Adam about 30%. I will ask him, but as far as I understand it, the money's there, so therefore we need to use the money that's there. But I'll ask and I'll report back. We're gonna move on and in order to keep this not 5,000 hours long. Okay, we're gonna move on to the daytime circulation assistant job description review.
So I just wanted to bring this before the board again because Libby has announced that she is job searching and it is her intention to leave by October. So this is the job description for her position. It was reviewed right before the pandemic, I believe. Oh no, it was reviewed about a year ago. So just in case there were any, I just wanted to make sure, so.
So this is what you have now,
Mhm.
and did you suggest changes? Are you
I
suggesting
don't
changes?
have, no, I don't
Okay.
have any changes to suggest,
How
but
important is it that the person has a bachelor's degree?
I think most of the positions, except for the page position, require that.
Does she have that?
Yes.
Is that realistic today?
Well, it says or equivalent, depending on prior work experience or documented accomplishments. So,
And what does this job pay?
around 16 or 17 starting an hour.
So you think this is pretty all-encompassing for what she does?
We have 3 circulation assistants, and this is the job description that covers all of them. So tasks vary, so that's why I have examples included in number 9, so.
Is this one of the attached?
Yep.
Yes.
It's called circulation assistant, position description 2023.
So I think I would second the bachelor's, the salary is an issue, of course, but they are alone in the library, they are in charge of the library and may have to make decisions when they're alone in the library, in the evening and on weekends. So to me, just anything you can up their qualifications seems reasonable.
Does the title reflect that? So circulation assistant,
Assistant, yeah.
Right.
Right.
kind of manager, or whatever the
Yeah.
terminology is.
Yeah,
Right.
you're being expected to manage.
Yeah, it's the title, yeah, you're right.
You
Yeah.
may get
Yeah.
more qualified applicants if you have
Right.
a better job title,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Right.
feel really ignorant about the context here wage-wise, except that we just, did this big wage study in the county, and that is a shockingly low wage for
That's what I
somebody,
thought,
something that
too.
requires
Right.
a bachelor's
Right.
degree.
Exactly.
It's
That-
shockingly
like
low.
There's a
Get what you pay
disconnect.
for.
But you have had luck getting people
Mhm.
with bachelors, unfortunately.
Wow. Well, bully for Ripon then.
I mean, we've already had a couple of people express an interest in the job,
Wow.
so.
What do we think about circulation lead instead of assistant?
But they're not leading over anyone else because they all have the same title, correct?
Right.
Well,
Circulation
but you lead
associate.
sometimes
You
when
have
you're,
to change the title for everyone,
right,
if you're gonna be hiring under a new title.
yes.
And they're
Right.
all doing the same, then you would change that.
And it's not a manager, Ben is a circulation supervisor, so.
Can you make it something like associate? That sounds awfully businessy, but I don't know.
Administrator?
It sounds like it sounds like you're managing somebody else. Associate doesn't sound like you're managing somebody
Right,
else.
but lead, I could live with that too, because at that moment, you're lead sometimes.
Well, it depends, only on a weekend.
Right,
So-
or evenings,
Right.
yeah, so,
Or just circulation team member? I don't know. I mean, we could get in the weeds with this, but,
oh.
The only person that it matters to is the person whose title it is,
right.
and then it matters to them.
Otherwise, I thought
I
it
think
was
they
good.
prefer that they're not in charge and they like being assistant and that they can ask Ben if they have a question, so, yes.
Specialist.
Circulation
go.
specialist.
Specialist,
Yeah.
I like
There
it.
you go.
There you go,
I'm good with that.
Okay.
so do,
Can we?
You can just make that change.
Yeah, do you need us to vote on that?
Well, it's not on
It's not an action
the.
item.
but you can change that without our
Isn't
vote.
that your purview to decide what that is? She did.
I can
None of
change
us
the title,
have it.
yeah.
Okay,
I appreciate how specific it is. I was sort of astonished.
Yeah.
I've never read a job description like this before, you know.
well, there's a lot.
Lifting
There's
and
a lot for
carrying,
this
objects
person
weighing
to
this
do.
much, walking, stopping, kneeling, crouching, wow, okay.
Yeah. I like watering plants.
It is important.
It is, we gotta keep them things alive. Okay, excellent. We're gonna move on to behavior policy review. So there's a Nina example and an Oshkosh example in the attachments.
So today I'm just looking for direction. So our public behavior policy is a little out of date and needs to be updated. So I wanted to provide a couple of other examples and just get some input for some direction. There are, Oshkosh goes too strict because we just don't have those issues here. But there are some things that aren't addressed. The hygiene issue we do not have addressed in our policy, and we have had issues with that recently with patrons coming in. Entering non-public areas of the building, I don't believe we have anything in our policy, and we've had issues with that in the past before COVID, so I think that should be
Walking in the staff room?
addressed, yes. I like how they both spell out the consequences, just that the director can do something or staff can ask you to leave and there are consequences and and then it would come to the board.
For sure, consequences.
So I would like to spell that out a little bit more in ours, so, and anything else, like if that's the right way to move forward in, I'll come with a draft next meeting, so.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious, I've spent a little more time in the Fond du Lac Library lately, and they certainly have a substantial homeless population that spends a good amount of time in the library, and sometimes they're definitely causing some issues, I know that, but it's also true that there aren't a lot of other places for some of them to go, and there's some ways that the library has really supported them too. I mean, there's a pizza restaurant that comes in and brings free pizza every day at noon for anybody who's there, and I mean, anybody can have it. It's not only for people who are clearly homeless. I'm not suggesting we do that, but I do
Into the
want to say
library,
that
they bring the pizza?
they do. They bring it into the library and they walk around the library distributing it to people on plates who are sitting at tables all over the
And
library.
do they help clean up then too?
I saw lots of pizza plates in baskets. I didn't see any issues, and they've been doing it every day for a while. So I guess what I just want to say is that I hope that we go with I hope that we don't go with the maximally strict
No,
the kind of
It's
thing. Like,
gonna
I think
be-
of that guy Don who used to sit up there drinking out of a bag. He read a lot. He really did. And, okay, he didn't smell too good, but he wasn't by and large a problem. And I hope that we can make space in our lives and our
yeah, I
buildings
think
for
we're all, I
somebody
think we
like
all
that.
wanna come from like a compassionate, caring,
Okay, good.
human rights, like you're
Yeah.
entitled to this as a public space kind of position.
Mhm.
None of us, I think, would wanna be punitive or
Okay.
I was very sad that they didn't allow people who looked like they were asleep. I'm sorry, if I shut my eyes because I need to rest them and I look like I'm asleep, that should not kick me out of the
We
Right.
would
room.
have people sleeping and snoring in Berlin all the time.
And not a problem most of the time, right?
Right. I mean,
Unless
once
they're trying to stay there for,
Well,
6 hours and on the couch kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But the New Yorker just did an article about the Minneapolis Public Library and their homeless population, and one of the things they said, because the sleep thing bothers me, and we've had a patron, he doesn't come anymore, but he'd been here for months and would snooze every day. And in Minneapolis, they just said, can't be at a computer sleeping, have to be like sitting up, and you can't, and your face has to be uncovered, so they can tell if you're on drugs or
Okay.
something, and thought that,
Or breathing.
Yeah.
that makes sense, you
Sure.
can't be face down sleeping,
Sure.
so.
I'm good if you kind of want to pick the pieces that you think are good and apply to Ripon from Oshkosh and Neenah. And
Is there
then
something major that you think you might want to revise?
from Ripons.
Well, she wanted to add a couple things, she said.
Right, well, like I said, the hygiene issue, this one, I mean, we recently had a patron who knew he wasn't feeling well, was in his car, decided not to go home, came here, had a digestive issue, did not realize or wasn't aware, but like sat down in our chair and was here for a while before leaving, had an odor about him. So just something like that, to have it in a policy to be able to address and
How do you
Who's the
address
poor
it?
person who has to
Tell
address
the
that? Who
person.
has to like tell
Yeah.
somebody, you smell too bad to be
Right,
here? Are you gonna
right,
do
I
that?
know.
I mean, it's not that I think you shouldn't, I just can't imagine
Yeah.
being that
It
person.
wasn't just a smell, was there other problems with,
that the chair had to be cleaned, so, yeah.
I would,
So that was an extreme, yeah,
Yeah.
we wouldn't do anything like that. I mean, when I was at Neenah, we had a patron who was in all the time, who had, a hygiene issue, and it took a long time for, the director to say something, and they did it very tactfully, pulled her aside, offered resources, this is where you can go clean up, we've got something, we can help you with deodorant and
well,
so.
we can,
So it wouldn't be anything obvious or a regular basis, but I just think it should be in the policy in
we
case
can
something happens.
deal with
So,
compassion, but if you have
Yes.
something written there, then that protects you and gives you
Support,
that.
yeah.
I would ask too that you kind of run it over with the staff, like whatever you're asking the staff to do, are they comfortable with that? So that
Right.
they are, recognizing and comfortable with whatever we decide.
And I guess if you had some situations, you would call the police,
Right.
if it was something that was really a danger,
Right.
Right.
that kind of thing,
Like if
someone's
somebody
getting,
had peanuts, for
someone's
example.
getting crazy.
No, they had, I wasn't here, this was a nighttime, but they did have somebody overdosing in the bathroom many years ago. So it's like thrashing around in the bathroom,
Do
yeah.
you have to have the city attorney review this?
I don't think so.
Okay. No? Okay.
All right, any other thoughts on this? Good to just kind of let Desiree put something together?
Yes.
Okay. All right, reminder for agenda items for the future library board meetings that need to be received. Remind me again, the the Friday before?
The Wednesday
The
before the meeting.
Wednesday before. So next month's meeting is June 25th. So Desiree needs to have agenda items no later than Wednesday, June 19th.
And I'll send out a reminder in the middle of the month about that too, a few days ahead of time.
So election of officers is on that one?
No, that's July.
July.
All right, any other questions, comments, concerns before we adjourn?
So we don't have to do any motions on the last couple items?
Those are
No,
just
those are
discussions,
discussion.
too.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna adjourn, thanks everybody,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.